what do the Arab states in the Persian Gulf have to go against Iran? Because they were begging to Iranian officials, let us hit some locations in the desert, and because we have to show something. Iran said, no, if you do that, you're going to be destroyed. This is the communication between the Arab states and Iran. And what is your understanding of that?
Well, first of all, David Petraeus is one of the dumbest men that walked the face of the earth. He should never have gotten 4 stars, let alone be the director of the CIA. He's a disgrace. And he just shows his ignorance of things. The Gulf Arab states were hit not because they're innocent, but because they're guilty. They provided basing for the United States of America that helped set up this conflict. And even though the United States may have temporarily withdrawn troops, there's still infrastructure in place that's plugged into an overall system. For instance, we may not have aircraft at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, but we do have a $1.1 billion, or I should say we had a $1.1 billion advanced radar system that was designed to detect Iranian missiles as they launch and feed that detection data into the ballistic missile defense system, protecting Israel and other air bases. So it is a party to the conflict. And the Qatari government didn't insist on it being shut down, dismantled, removed. It operated. The same thing holds with Kuwait. The same thing holds with Bahrain. The same thing holds with the United Arab Emirates. All these places that have been attacked are places that are home to American military installations that have an ongoing role. It's not an active role. And there are other things too. According to some reports, a CIA base of operations in Dubai has been struck because the CIA is actively, again, if people understand the region, I know you do, Dubai is a center of smuggling into and out of Iran. And the CIA is very active in using these smuggling routes to get resources in and out of Iran. So we have a major base there that talks to these Dow operators, that does this, coordinates with the United Arab Emirates government on anti-Iranian operations. The other thing is the Iranians know full well that while these nations were saying you can't use our airspace, you can't use this, behind their backs they were telling the United States, if you're going to attack Iran, kill Iran, finish Iran, get rid of the Iranian regime. And so they were punished. They were punished up front. And it's a signal that we can punish you. Now, the funny thing, again, Petraeus just shows his absolute ignorance. They have aircraft in the air, and they will integrate with the Combined Operations Center and be flown. David, do you think that the Saudi Air Force is capable of launching a penetration mission into Iran and effectively striking targets? What targets would you give the Saudi Air Force? Because I can guarantee you this, those targets won't be hit. They won't be destroyed. The Saudi Air Force cannot perform. Just ask the Houthi. Just ask the Yemeni. Saudi's been bombing the crap out of them since 2014 and achieved nothing because they're not very good. We gave them advanced aircraft. They're not very good. And now we're going to allow these Saudis to interfere with our air campaign, be disruptive of our air campaign. I think not. We've been down this road before. I just want to remind your audience, I've been there, done that, and I have the T-shirt, meaning that during the Gulf War, when Iraqi missiles started striking Gulf Arab states, these states were insistent on being allowed to participate in punitive attacks against Iraq for their national pride. And when we let them, they just screwed it up. I mean, we're talking about getting shot down because they're not very good. Running away in fear, that's another one. They would approach, see the air defense, and turn around and abort the mission, pickle their munitions, return home, saying, we just couldn't make it. I think the airplane was hiccuping. Got to land, get it checked out. And it was very disruptive because targets that should have been struck on time to be part of the campaign progression weren't getting struck. And now we have to take assets in and restrike these targets, et cetera. We're not going to give these Arabs anything to attack because they're not any good. They don't know what they're doing. They can't do it, and they will screw things up. So, if Iran was to say, yeah, you could bomb Fish Island here, we'll give you this target, you could drop 3 bombs off the water, take photographs of the splash and claim you're good, that would be face-saving mechanism. We wouldn't care because it's irrelevant. But we're not going to integrate these people in a meaningful fashion into a campaign as complex as this. First of all, to do that, we would have to expose extraordinarily sensitive secrets. There's a lot going on that people don't know about, a lot going on. They would have to be exposed to electronic warfare capabilities of the United States that are that have been, front loaded based upon intelligence information that we've collected through a variety of means, the classification of which is often code word. And you think we're going to give the Saudis access to code word information? You're higher than a kite. We're not going to give anybody access to that. And so, no, these people won't be integrated into this campaign. They'll be sitting there, flying circles in the sky over their capitals, fearful of the next step. Iran has paused, but Iran has paused by saying, stop supporting the American attacks. Stop it. Kick the Americans out of your country. I believe that's the Iranian demand. Kick the Americans out of your country. If you fail to do so, then you are part of the problem, not part of the solution, and we will continue to attack you. And so that, I think, you're going to see as the next phase. While they're doing this pause on the Arabs, and let me just say one more thing about the Arabs. It's funny. The Arabs are very mad. No, Nima, the Arabs are very afraid. They're very afraid right now because they are seeing vulnerabilities. They are seeing these despicable, despotic despots who govern these Gulf Arab states being exposed as the fat perverts that they are. These rich perfume princesses that just run around and steal money and live the high life while the rest of their people live the low life, who fly to London to whore and take drugs and drink booze and then return pretending they're pious Muslims. They're being exposed for what they are, rats, human rats. And the murder of Ali Khamenei, the martyrdom of Ali Khamenei, has empowered the Shia of these respective Gulf sheikdoms in a way that never has before. This is an existential fight. And what they're afraid of, I'll tell you what the Khalifa of Bahrain are afraid of, is that the majority Shia population there marches on the royal palace and kills them all, which may be their fate. They may end up running to Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia has to be worried because there is a lot of Shia in the eastern provinces that can rise up and take over the oil fields, where the bulk of the oil fields are. Kuwait has to be worried. The United Arab Emirates have to be worried. That's what's happening here. These guys are scared to death because Iran has initiated something that they can't control. See, they like the Abrams Accords because the Abrams Accords creates the fiction of, the Gulf Arab states, being for the benefit of the people. But what it means is that they've literally knelt before Israel and kissed the ring of Israel and accepted the notion of greater Israel, but they're going to bribe their people through the perception of economic prosperity. But what Iran has done now is exposed the inconsistencies and the lies and the hypocrisy of these tyrants. And it could, in fact, mean the end of one, if not more, maybe all of these pedophile despots. And that's what they are. I mean, these are not good people. These are not moral people. These are people who live the most despicable lifestyle imaginable. One that is, fueled by greed, lust, avarice, and oil money. These guys are just awash in oil money. We used to go around. We had something called Operation Tin Cup when we were as the weapons inspection, and everybody wanted to get on Operation Tin Cup. Richard Butler, come on, Richard, sue me. I love the discovery. Richard Butler, as the executive chairman, loved Operation Tin Cup because part of it was going around the Gulf and asking for donations, because the United Nations Special Commission was funded not by the direct UN budget, but by donations by member states who said, we specifically fund the operations of the weapons inspectors. And one place that they would always go is Kuwait. And it was very hard. I thought I wanted to go on that, but I had second thoughts, and because it wasn't what I do. I mean, I'm a weapons inspector. I'm not a diplomat running around begging for money. But I know, I'm not going to name their names, but they know who they are. And they were falling all over themselves to go with Richard Butler on Operation Tin Cup, because you would go on the Emir's yacht, and the Emir's yacht was full of pious people when you were at the pier. And then when the yacht crossed over the territorial boundaries, the booze came out and they were just having a party, and the Emir brought out the gold Rolexes. and he gave gold Rolexes to every member of the UMSCOM party. And Richard Butler went on at least 3 of these Operation Tin Cups, and he got a gold Rolex every single time, and he never declared it. Australian government, I don't know what the statute of limitations is on undeclared assets, but you might want to look at Richard Butler's gold watches and the gold watches of the others. I mean, it's just bribery, but it shows how despicable these people are and how wealthy they are and how ridiculous they are. You know, and these gold watches weren't used. They didn't, I mean, it wasn't the email saying, I'm sorry, I'm short on American dollars. Here's a gold watch. Take it to New York City and sell it for $40,000 and apply that money to send Scott Ritter into harm's way in Iraq so he can find the hidden weapons of mass destruction. That I would support. It was, hey, Richard Butler, we're playing the game, aren't we? We're living the life, aren't we? Here's a $40,000 wristwatch because what the hell? We're here just living the big life. We're fooling the Americans. We're doing everything right. We're getting away with slant drilling and robbing the Iraqis blind. So here's $40,000 bribe to keep your frickin' mouth shut about what's really going on. And other inspectors or other members of the UNCON staff took those watches as well. This is who we're doing. This is the reality of don't get me going about the Khalifa family in Bahrain and their sexual perversions. What they do with the Gulf Air stewardesses that they recruit. They use them as their own private pool of, you know, their own harem, prostitutes. They set them up in apartment buildings so that they can, you know, sexually please them, you know, every month. This is who they are. Leave Bahrain, drive the causeway over into Saudi Arabia and start counting the mosques you see at the end of the causeway that are built by pious Saudis who are leaving Bahrain, understanding the sins that they have committed. This is who we are dealing with here, and this is who the Iranians are dealing with. I'm not saying the Iranians are perfect. There's plenty of information that Iranian ayatollahs and imams are as human and fallible as the next people. There's evidence of corruption. There's evidence of prostitution. There's evidence of any wrongdoing because they're human beings. But the Islamic Republic of Iran is not systemically flawed like the Saudi kingdom, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Iranians are pious people. Look at Ahmadinejad, who apparently was killed, by the way, the former president. He was living the most humble life possible. I mean, this is a man who could have empowered himself with riches, and he was living the life of a simple pensioner, minding his own business. He was murdered by the Israelis and by the Americans because they're angry at the role he played in getting the Iranian nuclear program up to where it was. He's the guy that was the president when all of the breakthroughs took place. So they murdered him because they're angry at him for doing that which he was legally allowed to do. They murdered him. But this wasn't a man who was sitting in retirement surrounded by pretty women and drinking booze on the side. This is a pious man who was living the life of a pious pensioner, a simple life. And we murdered him. We murdered him. We murdered him. The Iranians are literally a step above the Gulf Arab nations. I'm not picking on the Arab people themselves. I would never do that. But what I am saying is that the Arab people have allowed themselves to be governed by these despicable monarchies for far too long. These monarchies that have nothing to do with democracy, nothing to do with serving the people, but exploiting the natural resources of their countries for their own personal benefits. Go to London.
You're talking about the leadership of these Arab states because
yes,
we know
100%.
that people, they're different, and we have to draw that line between the leadership and the people who are living in these countries. Scott, you've mentioned that the first 6 bombs were shot by Israelis, and what is your understanding of the attack on this, girls' school, and they murdered these little, girls in the school, more than 100, and if I'm not mistaken, 12 of these kids were killed in that school. What was that? How could that happen in such an operation?
Again, purely speculation, based upon my understanding of how targeting in support of a strategic air campaign works. When we launched Operation Desert Storm against Iraq in January of 1991, each target that we struck, we had a plan. And, the plan it had been programmed out for a long time. Aircraft were going to take off with specific munitions on board to fly a strike profile to drop a bomb on a target that was identified. And there was a reason to hit the target. We had a package of intelligence that said, this is what the target is, this is what the target does. And then we were dropping the bomb to achieve results on the ground that would impact the ability of the target to do what it was to do. And, we designed the impact points. My job was to review the targets after they were bombed to see if we actually had those impact points. Did we get the observable indication of success? But, I was familiar with everything that we were, I read all the target packages. These were viable targets. These were all legitimate targets under the law of war, and they were well defined. As the war went on, and we started blowing up these targets, a couple things happens. One, we move on to follow-on targets. But two, you get derivative targets, meaning if you blew up a building, but the Iraqis had evacuated the building, now you have to look for evacuation sites. So you start collecting intelligence about where these evacuation sites are, et cetera. If you're going after leadership targets and they aren't in the primary building you blew up, you're starting to look for them. I was involved in one, retargeting effort involving Saddam Hussein. I was summoned to a meeting with Prince Turki, the head of Saudi intelligence. General Waller, the deputy commander, was there, and I was briefed by Turkey of sensitive intelligence that the Saudis had about the movement of Saddam Hussein from Baghdad into Basra for some high-level meetings. And I was given a description of the building that he was supposed to be in on a given time frame. And my job was to find that building, create a target package, and put bombs on that building and kill Saddam. I spent some time doing it. We're under time frame. I'm rushed. And so I'm sitting here working with a very capable photo interpreter, and we come up with 3 targets that meet the criteria. And I wrote them up and I submitted them, and we dropped bombs on all 3 targets. Now, right off the bat, that 2 of the targets aren't the target. Let's say that I got it right, and one of them was the target. 2 of them aren't. And what we're looking for are residences. So I blew up 2 homes automatically that were full of innocent people, had nothing to do with Saddam. The third one, if it was Saddam, we're going to kill innocent people anyways. But this was considered to be collateral damage, acceptable damage. It turns out that Saddam didn't make the trip, and we blew up 3 homes, and we killed at least 3 families. That's how this happens. But this normally happens later in the air campaign, when chaos has taken over the war, and now we're looking for targets that aren't well defined. We're looking for concepts, and we're trying to meet concepts, put it into physical place on the ground, and achieve destruction. The reason why it doesn't happen up front is because you normally have a very well developed target plan and such. For Israel to strike these targets, or CENTCOM, I think it was actually the Americans who struck it, because the schools in southern Iran, in Minab, I believe. So it was the United States that struck it. What it means is that we were given a problem set, suppression of Iranian missile launch capabilities, because if it's in Minab, that's what it's related to. And we're looking for not just launch locations, but command and control locations, etc. And some targeteers, photo analysts, looked at this building and made a determination that this building was a command and control facility. Maybe they saw something, maybe there's something cool. I don't know the intelligence, but somebody determined that this building is a target worthy of putting missiles into. And it was a deliberate action. And it tells you that our intelligence is horrible. Because for us to believe that a active secondary school for girls aged 6 to 12 is a command and control target, it means we got it completely wrong, which now we roll into the bombs that are dropping. If we got it that wrong, that means we got everything wrong. That means we're blowing up nothing. We're blowing up targets that the Iranians fed to us. Again, I just have to go off of past experience. A Amr Rashid al-Ubaidi was the minister of oil, but he was also the guy who used to be the director of the Iraqi Military and Industrial Commission. And we were having a talk, I think, in the 1993 timeframe, and he was getting frustrated with me because I kept coming in and carrying out these inspections that kept exposing the Iraqis as liars on the periphery. But he said, look, so you blow us up in the war, you blow everything up, you blow up our files, you blow up everything, and we're trying to reconstitute things, and we tell you a story that's based upon incomplete data that we have. And you, being the brilliant Scott Ritter that you are, tear our story apart, and you find inconsistencies, and you carry out inspections that show that we were wrong. And then you come here and you call me a liar to my face. I said, well, you told me a story that turned out not to be true, and I can prove that it's not true now. And he said, oh, the great Scott Ritter, you're so awesome. Do you know that how easily I can control you? He said, I know, for instance, that you are reliant upon a certain stream of information that comes from Kurds. He said, so what if I set up a special cell? And we said, how can we get Scott Ritter, how can we take control of his inspections? And this special cell creates intelligence, and we do a good job. We get the photographs, we get everything, and we let it be discovered by the Kurdish stream, and that data makes it to you. And then you start inspecting these sites. We now own you, because now we know the cause and effect relationship, and we own you, and we're going to control your inspections. And later on, they did exactly that to certain inspections. They took control of the inspection process by controlling the flow of data. The reason why I bring this up is that the Iranians are full of very clever people, and they've been preparing for this war for a long time. They've been watching the United States fight wars in Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. They understand how we collect intelligence. They understand how we collect intelligence. And they have been feeding us false streams of intelligence for some time now that has prompted us to build target decks where we are expending precious resources to blow up things that simply don't exist. The Iraqis did this during the counter Scud campaign in Western Iraq. The Iraqis knew when we started getting resources over that they were going to have trouble getting a window of launch opportunity, or else they had to get hit. So what they would do is they created a decoy unit that would set up fixed decoy sites that would get our attention, and we'd send bombers there. And then they'd do a mobile decoy site, meaning they'd have targets moving that would be detected, that reported on, and the rest of the resources came here. And while we were out there bombing fixed decoys and going after mobile decoys, the two real launchers snuck out of Al-Qaim, fired their missiles against Israel, and escaped away and got away with it. This is what Iran is doing. Iran is running a campaign of this sophistication, etc. You take a look at a lot of the imagery that Israel has published about blowing up Iranian launchers. These are decoy launchers put out there by the Iranians to absorb that. They put out information about fixed locations, and the Israelis are bombing these fixed locations. The Americans are bombing these fixed locations, but there's nothing in those buildings. They've been evacuated long ago. We may on occasion get it right and blow something up, but that's okay, because the Iranians have a system that is, has enough depth to absorb losses and keep functioning. And we see it keep functioning today. The Iranians have been preparing for this campaign for a long, long, long time. The bombing of this school is indicative of the fact that we don't have a clear intelligence picture. Now, people say, well, Scott, we were good enough to get Ali Khamenei on the first day. We weren't that good, guys. He was sitting at home. He wanted to be killed. We fell into his trap. Ali Khamenei, a man who probably had cancer, a man who has openly said that his body is failing him, died a martyr's death. And in doing so, he saved the Islamic Republic of Iran, because the people now have rallied around that cause like they've never done before. That's proof positive the way that the Iranians have exploited our system of war. We thought we were carrying out a decapitation strike with the first 6 missiles, but we guaranteed we lost the war, and the Iranians guaranteed we lost the war too, because all we did is turn Ali Khamenei into a martyr.
Yeah. Yeah, as we talk, Scott, we've learned that Iran has hit 3 tankers, British and the U.S. tankers in the Persian Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, because they're aware in that they have, nobody can pass this strait, and because there's some sort of blockade happening there. And how do you see, and I'm sure that you've seen the picture, the footage is coming out of Israel, Tel Aviv is just getting into, some really serious missiles are hitting Tel Aviv. Iran, Tehran they're hitting Tehran as well. How do you see, as it seems to me that Iran has started with a strategy they had at the end of the 12-day war, not going that with, intensifying the battlefield, going little by little and gradually increasing the number of missiles that they can fire at Israel.
Well, a couple things. First of all, let's look at Tehran. What is Israel blowing up today? They're blowing up known locations. They're blowing up the police academy, the police barracks. They're blowing up the Revolutionary Guard Command headquarters building. Do you think that the police woke up this morning